This is Sarah Berger, and today I'm going to be presenting notebooks for authentic assessment. And specifically, I'm going to focus in on talking about interactive science notebooks as a summative assessment in the classroom. I've been working with these a little bit in my past experience as a substitute teacher, and I'm also doing my residency this year. I will be at Natrona County High School in the spring in environmental science working with Jenny Edwards. And she is a big proponent of using ISNs for scientific class instruction. So what is an interactive science notebook? It's a great way to keep all of your class materials organized. She is very detailed about what type of notebook students need. They need a spiral bound notebook with at least 100 pages. And the other big thing that she asks students to look for is for a notebook that's larger than your typical notebook. So it needs to be at least 9 inches wide. And the reason that is because every assignment that we do in our environmental science class goes into our ISN and we glue them in. And if you have the smaller notebook, your stuff's hanging out and it looks tacky and it gets sprayed and looks like junk after a few months. And we're going to keep this notebook for the whole entire year. So we want to keep it nice and organized. We want to make it look neat. So you get the bigger size notebook to hold everything in and make it look nice. She also asks that you try to find one that has the pocket in the front because we use that to put temporary things until we glue them in. And she also uses that as her hall pass. She keeps the hall pass that the kids can use in there for when they need to access that. So when you're using your notebook, by having all the materials together, you can relate different standards. And in the science realm, we have the next generation science standards. And a lot of our topics cross-cut each other. We actually have a section called cross-cutting concepts. So when you have your materials together, you can go back and look at what you've already covered, and you can to help you to see with what you're going for next to help you with your future material. So notebooks can be used for both formative and summative assessment. As I said in this particular presentation, I'm going to be focusing on summative assessment, and also in my particular residency classroom, we are using them summatively. Another thing that teachers can opt to do, and this is something we are going to be doing in our classroom, is that students can use their notebooks as a resource material for them during exams. So they can look back and see what they've done to answer questions. It's motivation to help the kids do a good job initially putting things into their notebook and keeping it up to date, because then it helps them when it's time to take the test. So on the history, I had a hard time finding an article that really spoke specifically about the history of ISNs. What I did find, the articles talked about that notebooks have been used for pretty much as long as science has been going on. Galileo, Darwin, Da Vinci, they all had notebooks where they recorded their findings, observations, did drawings, kept their work together. So typically when you have a science notebook, all that stuff goes on the right side of the page, and they would just leave the left side blank. But with an interactive science notebook, we now utilize the left side page, and the left side is things that we're learning, things that the teacher is going over, notes, that type of stuff all goes on the left, and then our actual scientific work goes on the right. I did notice in my research that references to ISNs appeared in many scientific journals, especially through the National Science Teachers Association, shortly after 2000. So while I didn't find that specific article that said that that's when it was invented and by whom it was invented, I'm going to say that that's probably about the time that they came to be, this concept of using the left-hand page. So as I kind of already talked about, your input goes on the left page and the output goes on the right page. Here's the actual descriptor page that Jenny puts in all of her student notebooks, so that way they can know as they go along. It also talks about that at some point they can have optional assignments and they can choose from a list. So there's different things that students can pick depending on their learning styles and what interests them. So far in our class, we've been pretty rigid about what has gone on the pages, but I'm excited to see when we get to the choice assignment later. So here's an example page out of my notebook. Right at the beginning, you can see up in the upper corner there, the pages are numbered. And I haven't kept up on my table of contents, but the students will keep that there to help with their organization. On the right, you can see the unit summary page. So this is kind of a working page that students use throughout the unit that has all the unit objectives straight from the next generation science standards that we're using. And they can mark off, do they have it for sure? Do they kind of have it? Do they have it not yet? So that's a work in progress. As they're getting things, we're hoping they're moving to the left column that they've got it. We also go back and periodically help them fill in the what did we do, What did we learn, and how does it help us answer the question? Here's another example page of the work that we did. So here on the left page, page 6, we went through an exercise together as a class where we were defining what your worldview is about the environment. And we looked at different people. You can see at the bottom there, Jane Goodall, Bill Gates, and Hans Rosling. And we looked at their environmental ethic and how they came up with their worldview. Then on the right is the page that we worked on. So we had to draw a picture someplace from our childhood that we played. So that's my elementary school playground that I did a drawing of from Google Earth. And then we talked about our outputs and our inputs that help develop our environmental ethic and our environmental values. On this page, I just wanted to show, I know it kind of came out blurry and I apologize for that, but it's really important in these notebooks that the kids don't jump ahead. They have to be working on the section that we're working on so we all stay on the same page. So in this case, we had 2 different assignments that kind of went on the same day that were information. On the bottom was some data, and then the top one was a case study. So instead of attaching it to a new page, we just simply stapled it over the top. So that's another option to make flaps instead of going to a new page. Here's another example on the left. This is where Jenny did a lecture about properties of water. And then on the right, I actually didn't write down all this stuff because I was helping students instead of doing the lab myself, but this was a water property lab where they had 7 different stations where they could investigate each of the water properties and find their own observations and stuff. So that went on the right on page 11. Now, up in the upper corner, you can see where we come to our summative assessment. So this is the checklist that we're using in our environmental science classroom. So we're assessing for the content, you can see that. So those are specific assignments up there: limited water on Earth, pollution, and use data. And then she has a couple of extra options there. So if the students really went above and beyond, they can earn extra credit. And then the lower section is where she's assessing how well they've organized their notebook. Is it complete? Is it organized? And then the properties is another assignment. So all told, they could earn 10 points from that assignment plus 2 extra credit points. So I know I'm supposed to put the reference in my comments, but these are the references that I've used so far. I look forward to investigating this more as I write the paper. Thank you.